获了35份关于 UFO， 也就是不明飞行物的档案，而这些档案提供了很多的证据，让人们觉得地球并不孤独。这些英国国家档案馆首次发布的 UFO 档案当中，还有8500份 UFO 目击者拍摄的照片和手绘的图画，以及目击者们提供的文字资料。有目击者说，他曾看到一艘太空船在英国的农田上制作圆圈图案。还有目击者说，他曾在苏格兰的一个水库上发现了飞碟。还有人说，曾在英国沃尔维奇看到不明飞行物飞过。而这张图则描绘了在英国威尔士南部的一条高速路附近发现了不明飞行物。这张照片是一名退役的英国军官在斯里兰卡提供的，他拍摄下了当时在天空中看到的不明飞行物。而这张照片是在约克郡东部拍摄的，这架战机的旁边有一个不明飞行物。这些文件似乎都在证实不明飞行物的确存在。在据说曾经看到过 UFO 的人当中，甚至还有人声称自己遭到了外星人的绑架。
I heard a distant roar of engines getting louder. Suddenly a huge craft appeared over the house, heading in a westerly direction at speed. In the morning, my wife and I were listening to the radio when the presenter gave a time check. Somehow, during the night, I gained a whole hour. I'm now beginning to wonder if I was abducted.
对 UFO 感兴趣的不仅仅是百姓，还有英国政府。早在1977年，英国政府就曾经呼吁相关机构根据目击者提供的资料对 UFO 展开调查。1年之后，英国上议院甚至还就 UFO。
英国国防部3号公布了一批秘密文档，主要记载了从1997年到2005年间在英国发现的不明飞行物的报告，包括目击者拍摄的照片和口述的文字等。英国国防部称，为保证领空不被怀有敌意的或未经允许的飞行物入侵，国防部会调查所有收到的声称目击 UFO 的报告。目前这批档案已提供给民众免费下载，时效为1个月。
秘密文件显示，1957年5月20号晚上，英国曼斯顿皇家空军基地的雷达控制员发现，在诺维奇市上空出现了一个不明飞行物。驻英美国空军的2架战斗机随后紧急升空拦截，飞行员获准使用战斗机上携带的全部24枚火箭弹向其开火。今年已经77岁的米尔顿·托里斯自称是当年的2名飞行员之一。他回忆道，神秘飞行物停顿了一下，突然以超过1万公里的惊人时速飞走了。他说，当时的情景几乎让他尿了裤子。
It had to be something of an alien spacecraft of some sort, because it was going so damn fast.
此外，解密文件还披露，1991年，意大利航空公司一名客机飞行员正准备在伦敦希斯罗机场降落时，发现了不明飞行物。那个大约3米长的物体类似导弹，发棕色或浅黄褐色光。档案显示，飞行控制室的雷达上也出现无法解释的图像。国防部调查以后说，这一物体并非导弹，但是由于缺乏证据，只能将这起事件列为不明飞行物。
您相信这个世界上真的有幽浮或者是外星人吗？英国国防部最近解密了一批公文的文件，17年前，也就是在1991年4月份的时候，一架意大利的航空班机准备降落在机场的时候，竟然是差一点跟一个幽浮相撞，当时还有不少人指证莉莉。
仰望天空，许多人都会有个疑问，到底有没有外星人和幽浮？英国军方最近解密公布19件4500多页神秘档案，记录1986年到1992年外太空的幽浮曾经多次造访地球。1991年4月，幽浮甚至在伦敦希斯洛机场差一点跟一架意大利航空的班机相撞。当时飞机正副驾驶和机场塔台都指证莉莉，那是一架长约3公尺的不明飞行物。经过多方查证，它不是人类的太空船，也不是火箭，最后只能认定是幽浮。档案中还附上许多目击民众把幽浮的样子画下来，幽浮起先闪白光，没多久又闪红光。其实更早的第3类接触发生在51年前，1957年5月，驻守英国的美军飞行员奉命要拦截一架疑似幽浮的不明飞行物，但后来幽浮瞬间消失，只留下这张照片为证。外太空浩瀚无垠，英国解密这些 X 档案曝光，似乎更加
外星人和不明飞行物 UFO 到底是否存在或者光临过地球，这一直是个谜，也是美国的最高军事机密。然而27号，一些美国空军的前军官打破了数十年的沉默，他们说自己曾经亲眼目睹过 UFO。
罗伯特·萨拉斯，退役美国空军上校，曾是冷战时期美军一名洲际弹道导弹发射官。27号，他牵头组织其他几名退役军官举行了一个特别新闻发布会。发布会上，萨拉斯透露，1967年他曾经历了一起 UFO 光临蒙大拿州马尔姆斯特罗姆美军基地事件。
I received a call from one of my topside guards, the flight security controller, stating that they had been observing strange lights in the sky.
萨拉斯说，最初他并没有在意，但几分钟后他又接到电话。
This time he was screaming into the phone, saying they're looking at an object, a red glowing object hovering just about, shaped like a fat cigar. I think he said a pregnant cigar. White pulsating light between the pulsations. He said.
United States Air Force did recover alien bodies. They didn't tell me about it either, and I want to know. I want to know. I want to know.
That what we're looking at is that disclosure is absolutely going to happen, and it's actually being planned.
If it's not released, that they will do it themselves, and that would not be...
It would be more shocking for them to do it that way.
They're real. They have discussed what to do about it. We need the governments to reveal these files.
And the American people are losing patience with our government's intransigence in ending this embargo.
It's time we get this out in the open.
There's new energy to harness. But the world has changed, and we must change with it.
This is a message being sent to the United States government.
新西兰军方昨天公开了大约2000份关于 UFO 目击事件的机密档案，最早的档案可追溯至上世纪50年代，内容包括手绘 UFO 和据称是外星人的手写文件。
奇怪的灯光和不明飞行物出现在新西兰南岛凯古拉山区上空，电视台摄制组还拍下了2道不明光线。
Sort of hovered along the tree line a bit and then darted sharply up and to the left.
这是发生在1978年新西兰最著名的 UFO 事件。当时新西兰军方解释说，这可能是自然光线折射产生的现象，或许是船上的光线被折射到了云层里。鉴于公众迫切了解真相的心情，新西兰军方昨天终于同意公开 UFO 目击档案，但是报告中涉及的人员仍会保持匿名状态。
There is something going on that the public needs to look into a bit more deeply, and we need to try to understand.
在这些2000多页的文件中，最早的文件可以追溯到1954年，最近的则是2009年。文件中记载了新西兰军方人士、商业客机飞行员、社会公众曾近距离目睹不明飞行物的经历。一些报告除了有目击者证词外，还有飞碟的绘制图像、外星人面戴法老面具的样子，以及据称是外星人字迹的样本等。这次公布的秘密文件都是复印件，原件仍被保存在新西兰国家档案馆内。有的文件将一直保存到2080年。
英国国防部国家档案馆首度解密公布了1995年到2003年期间5000多页有关不明飞行物的绝密档案，我们一起来了解一下。
档案中提到，在1995年，曾有人目击一艘比足球场大20倍的巨型飞碟在曼彻斯特上空盘旋很久。英国国防部的一名优副专家曾据此画下了草图。他形容说，这艘巨型飞碟是一个椭圆形的物体，有一个带着弧度的前端，后端则有许多细小的喷气孔。此外，解密档案中还包括了1997年在兰开夏郡发现的雪茄状的飞行物体，1980年在萨福克皇家空军基地附近发现了一个奇怪的会逐渐变大的东西，以及1998年在威尔斯南部上空发现的一个圆形太空站等。
档案中最引人注目的当属丘吉尔一名贴身保镖的孙子1999年写给国防部的几封信，信中揭露了英国首相丘吉尔在2战期间曾下令掩盖的一起幽浮事件。当时多名飞行员从不同位置证实，一架英国皇家空军侦察机遭到不明飞行物一路尾随。据称，丘吉尔在跟当时任盟军最高统帅的艾森豪威尔将军举行秘密战争会议时，下达命令，禁止报道这一起发生在英国东海岸空域的离奇事件。禁令时间长达50年，目的是防止引发公众的恐慌情绪。
1976年，美国航天局曾计划实施阿波罗20号登月计划，但官方消息说，该计划后来由于资金问题被迫取消。但现年78岁的前美国空军雇员威廉姆·劳德里奇声称，该计划是被秘密实施的。另外，阿波罗20号上的宇航员们还有惊人的发现，我们来看一下。这个宇航员们在拍摄月球的照片的时候，意外地拍到了一个巨大的宇宙飞船的残骸。据了解，这个庞然大物长达4000米，高达500米。那么据了解呢，1976年的8月，加利福尼亚州美国范登堡空军基地一枚土星5号运载火箭发射升空。美国宇航局此次的任务呢是揭示月球阴暗面的奇异现象。而就在这次任务的过程当中，宇航员们发现了那个类似宇宙飞船的庞然大物。那其实呢，在1971年阿波罗15号执行任务的时候，就已经发现了这个物体。当时宇航员们认为那是一块外形奇特的岩石，后来经过研究发现，这个物体应该是智慧生命的杰作，而且呢，其存在的时间已经长达。
世界上有没有 UFO 呢？这个最近英国啊，这个把一个有历史的录音带放了出来。这个录音带里面呢，其实是一位美国驻英的这个军官，他当时是说呢，他在这个一片森林里面感觉到这个动物们突然的非常的活跃，然后呢，他就看到了一道红光下来。这个录音带被披露了，
然后呢，就紧接着看着森林的很多都被这个烧了啊，然后他说天哪，这怎么回事呢？现在这段录音就披露，据说呢，当时被英国国防部是刻意。
网上盛传，一名中国网友11日在西安捕捉到一不明飞行物盘旋的画面，虽然只有15秒，但金字塔形物体清晰可见。不少看过视频的人致电紫金山天文台，求证所见是否为真。无独有偶，哥伦比亚网友近日也捕捉到金字塔形状的不明飞行物停留在某大楼上空，久久没有离去。而遥远的俄罗斯也有2名网友在莫斯科红场分别拍摄到同一不明飞行物，和早前在哥伦比亚及西安所见。
过去呢，我们只在科幻电影或者是报纸杂志上看过外星飞碟，那至于世界上是不是真的有飞碟还很难说。最近呢，英国人拍摄到了一段视频，画面上不仅有飞碟，还有战斗机围追堵截，场面简直和这个好莱坞的大片有得一拼。日前，一位身份不明的摄影师拍摄到英国2架军用战机追逐一个不明圆形球体飞行物的画面。这段视频时长30秒，拍摄于英国的一家停车服务站。画面显示，这个不明飞行物出现没多久，可能就被雷达监测到了。随后，英国军方紧急派出了军机拦截。目前，英国国防部拒绝对此事加以评论。不过，有负责研究调查的专家表示，不明圆形球体飞行物很有可能就是真正的外。
关于外星人是否存在、是否与地球人类进行过接触的争论，多年来一直没有停止过。就在25号，美国阿波罗14号登月计划成员，也是世界第6位登上月球的宇航员艾德加·米切尔语出惊人。他在接受路透社的采访时说，外星人不仅存在，而且曾多次与地球人类接触，只不过各国政府一直对此讳莫如深罢了。艾德加·米切尔是1971年2月6号搭乘阿波罗14号飞船登上月球的。当时，米切尔担任登月舱驾驶员。他和阿波罗14号的飞行指令长、美国第1位宇航员艾伦·谢泼德曾经一同在月球上行走了9个小时17分钟，创下了在月球行走时间最长的记录。据米切尔说，当年他从月球返回太空舱时，有一种被某种东西注视的奇怪感觉，他感到自己和宇宙中的智能生命产生了心灵接触。
I don't know how many or where or how they're doing it, but they've been observing us and here for quite some time.
米切尔称，外星生物的确存在，并且在过去60年中曾多次与地球人类接触。美国宇航局的宇航员曾不止一次地与外星人打过交道。米切尔还声称，美国政府早就知道外星人的存在，却故意将其隐瞒。
The reason for the denial was, number one, they didn't know if these were hostile and could we protect ourselves from them. Didn't want the Soviets to know, so they devised to.
您相信 UFO 吗？您相信有外星人存在吗？一直以来，人们对于 UFO， 也就是不明飞行物是否存在，展开了激烈辩论。多个国家也成立了专门的调查机构。不过，由于调查结果都是最高军事机密，很少有人能知道真相。美国当地时间27号，6名退役的美国空军军官将打破沉默，在华盛顿召开新闻发布会，公开他们曾和 UFO 接触的内幕和证据。这场解密的新闻发布会由退役的美国空军上校罗伯特·萨拉斯带头组织。他曾是冷战时期美军的一名洲际弹道导弹发射官。萨拉斯透露，他曾在1967年经历了一起 UFO 光临蒙大拿州马尔姆斯特罗姆美军基地的事件。他这样形容当时的情景：一架散发着亮红色光芒的椭圆形飞行物出现在军事基地上空，基地中的导弹发射系统几乎全都出现故障。萨拉斯说，事后他的上司立即命令他签署保密协议，宣誓必须就此事永远保持沉默。除了萨拉斯，多名前美军空军军官都表示 ，UFO 曾多次在美军核武器发射基地的上空出现过。只要这些 UFO 神秘出现，美军基地内的核导弹就会发生故障。在27号的新闻发布会上，这些前美军军官还将公布一些解密的。
He went out in the field. And he proceeded to tell me what to do.
Good afternoon. My name is Charles I. Halt. I retired from the U.S. Air Force in 1991 as a colonel. During my military career, I was base commander of 2 large installations, and at the time of my retirement, I was in the Department of Defense Inspector General's office with total inspection oversight of all services and all service agencies. In 1980, I was reassigned from the Pentagon to RAF Bentwaters as a deputy base commander. At that time, Bentwaters was one of the largest tactical fighter wings in the world. We had the 2 base complex, Woodbridge and Bentwaters in England, and 4 FOLs in Germany, and 2 additional standby bases. In December 1980, early in the morning, several of our security policemen discovered strange lights in the forest in East Anglia, just outside the back gate of RAF Woodbridge. 3 patrolmen, Sergeant Peniston, Airman Burroughs, and Airman Cabana-Sack, actually were dispatched into the forest and approached a craft. They reported it being triangular, approximately 3 meters on a side, dark metallic in appearance.
What you have heard here today is evidence of a phenomenon. It sounds fantastic, and it is fantastic. We presented this evidence in the public interest of open government. Our signatures on affidavits in the press kit that you have attest to the truth of our statements. Our evidence is now public domain. The real question is, what is the public going to do with it, this testimony? It has been a general practice of the media to scoff at these kinds of stories, make light of such testimony. We can only ask that you take the time to give some serious consideration not only to our statements, but to the statements of other witnesses out there who have similar incidents. There's also documentary evidence that helps support what we have said. We hope you will take the time to at least take a look at those, research this a little bit. And if you do, I think you'll come to the same conclusions that we have. That is, that the UFO phenomenon is real, not imaginary. There's current excessive secrecy in our government surrounding this phenomenon. Unknown aerial objects have in fact been observed over many of our nuclear weapons bases and other nuclear facilities, and in some cases the appearance of these objects coincided with compromising the operational readiness of our nuclear weapons. Although each of us might have different opinions about the meaning and intent of these incidents, I think we can all agree that the tampering with nuclear weapons is a national security concern. This is Air Force official policy on UFOs. This is dated 2005, but I believe it is current policy. I'll just read one part of it. It says, no UFO reported, investigated, and evaluated by the Air Force was ever an indication of threat to our national security. That is clearly misleading. It is false based on our testimonies. This statement, the decision to discontinue UFO investigations, was based on an evaluation report prepared by the University of Colorado in 1969, I believe. This was the infamous Condon Committee study. There was substantial evidence to show that study was superficial and biased. In particular, the Echo and Oscar incidents I spoke about were never investigated by the Condon Committee, even though their principal investigator was well aware of these incidents. Obviously, the testimony given here today conflicts directly with that Air Force policy statement. We ask that our government answer to the public about the obvious discrepancy between our testimony and that of the current statement. Indeed, we demand an answer based on the foundation of our democracy that says, I want to paraphrase Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President Roosevelt, the people should be strong enough and well enough informed to maintain the sovereign control over its government. Finally, I want to say, I think I speak for every one of us here, I have the utmost respect for all the men and women in the U.S. Air Force. I graduated from the Air Force Academy. I thoroughly enjoyed being a part of the Air Force, and I was honored to serve my country in that way. Our disagreement and challenge to the Air Force has nothing to do with the people of the Air Force. It has to do with official Air Force policy. And I think they are deliberately withholding the facts, not just in what you've heard here, but continuously since 1969. And by doing so, they're not allowing the people of this country to engage in the decisions regarding events that are clearly national security issues and concern to all of us. We're simply asking for the truth.
They're trying to conceal this information, the fact, actually, for all those years. Do you think this will do good for the society's stability, or is a kind of prevent for some advance or further research for our society?
No, that's a big one. We have been lied to for so many decades about the truth of the matter, and I think we need to have more openness in society as far as what these things are. Recently, in the last year or two, the Catholic Church has said publicly, it's okay, ETs can exist. There are brothers, and they are theologically saying it's okay to believe in extraterrestrials. And if the Catholic Church says it, it's got to have a big stick, I would think, as far as the Western world is concerned anyhow.
Do you think right now it's a time for human beings to admit there are other spiritual beings in the universe besides the human race?
Oh yeah, I think that's the thing is, people are so wrapped up nowadays in their own world. They're worried about jobs, they're worried about mortgages. They could care less about UFOs and ETs and paranormal events and whatnot. That isn't even on their radar scope. Unfortunately, that's... I understand that. I haven't spoken to college students that much myself, but I understand that that is a fact. Yeah. And that's healthy. I think that's goodness. Oh, yeah. I just wonder what's in the archives in the Vatican as far as UFOs and things like that are concerned. If that could be released, wow, I bet it would blow the socks off a lot of people. That would be interesting. Okay. Let me
You asked what would the potential changes be for society, would this be good? Let me briefly summarize and say, in 1975, a former CIA official, Victor Marchetti, wrote a best-selling book called The CIA and Cult of Intelligence. The CIA took him to the Supreme Court to attempt to block publication of that book. Ultimately, a redacted version of it was released. It was the first book in American history to be censored by the U.S. government. The same Victor Marchetti, in 1979, wrote an article for Second Look magazine. The title, I believe, was How the CIA Views the UFO Phenomenon. He said, among other things, this subject was so sensitive that you did not talk about it in the agency unless you had a need to. Nevertheless, there were rumors floating around at the highest levels of CIA about recovered crashed UFOs and the bodies of their crews. Thirdly, Victor Marchetti said, in his opinion, as an intelligence analyst with CIA for I think 11 years, he was of the opinion that no government on earth will voluntarily release this information because it would jeopardize the status quo, i.e. their power. Even if there's no hostile intent or implication to the visitation of these beings, if indeed these are extraterrestrials, even if they're not meaning us any harm whatsoever, governments have nothing to gain and everything to lose by admitting the reality of this. And Victor Marchetti's opinion is that this will probably come out, by some action on the part of the phenomenon itself, which will leave no doubt in anyone's mind. But don't expect Washington or Moscow or any other government to volunteer the reality of all of this.
One of my reasons for asking this is, being an old district attorney, the definition of murder is the unlawful killing of another human being, but nowhere does it say, does it have to be 100% human? Can it be 1% human? I'm waiting for somebody to play that card. I'm out of the business now, but that might be fun. The other issue is the toadies in government who are following their orders to lose the files in Freedom of Information Acts, I think might take a totally different view as to their attempt to preserve their jobs if they realize that there might be an argument made that there's a First Amendment violation by suppressing the truth about these things that have been found and seen and so forth. And the suppression works to favor certain religions versus other religions.
At this stage, the rocket was traveling between 11 and 14,000 miles per hour when a saucer-shaped craft entered the frame.
It flew into the frame like this, and it shot a beam of light at the warhead. Now, remember, all this stuff is flying at several thousand miles an hour. So this thing fires a beam of light at the warhead, hits it, fires another beam of light, and then flies out the way it came in. And the warhead tumbles out of space. Now, when the lights came on, Major Mansman turned around and looked at me and said, "Were you guys screwing around up there?" And I said, "No, sir." And he said, "What was that?" And I said, "It looks to me like we got a UFO."
Sightings in France. The UFOs filmed in Milan, Italy. The UFO fleets over Peru. The Chinese scientists filming UFO at the Purple Mountain Observatory. It goes on and on.
Well, of course, at this late date, there is just an abundance of documentation, military reports, radar sightings, personal experiences. They go back for many years, but they have been routinely ignored, shun aside by the government, ignored by the media, and therefore the average person rarely gets to hear of these things. But when you put them together, it forms a very compelling picture that there is a reality that's happening all around us that we are being systematically denied information on. I've had many people say, well, look, if all this happened, wouldn't there have been military people and radar operators and even policemen and stuff who would have said they had these experiences? And the answer is absolutely yes. But early on, they learned their lesson. If they step forward and they said, yes, I saw these things, then they tend to lose their job, they lose their credibility, people begin to snicker at them. And that's been very effective over the years in keeping this whole issue quiet.
I know that if
they took an oath not to reveal that. In our country, that was very serious at that time. Okay? If you violated a top secret clearance, you could be put in jail for 15 or 20 years and everything you have done removed from you. Yeah.
Could this be why the military observations never reached the public? But many who had been involved in UFO sightings over the years felt a strong urge to reveal what they knew and to be relieved from the burden of carrying these secrets. After 30 or 40 years and having retired from service, many were willing to break their oaths and speak publicly.
They can stop on a dime, they can take off at Mach 10 or greater. It's unbelievable what they can do. So we need to know these things. So the only reason I'm here is to tell you, let's disclose this whenever we can. Please. Thank you.
In 2001, the U.S. medical doctor Stephen Greer staged an initiative where several hundred witnesses of high rank and high credibility came forward with what they had experienced during service. The Disclosure Project, helped by the Internet and YouTube, was a formidable eye-opener to people all over the world.
So we started a project that's known as the Disclosure Project, which people can see at disclosureproject.org, where we began to identify military and corporate and CIA intelligence officers who had personal knowledge of the classified operations dealing with this subject, and to get them to come forward with our information to disclose this publicly. Because what we felt was necessary was that the secrecy should be ended and this information disclosed so that humanity, not just one country in America, but all of humanity could make peaceful contact with these civilizations visiting us, but also would lay the foundation for these new technologies, the energy and propulsion systems that are behind these UFOs that are so mysterious. How are they flying? Well, this is understood, but they are in classified projects. So that was another objective, was to get the technologies out to the public so we could have a civilization that would get freed from the use of oil and the destruction of the environment.
There were probably 1,500 reported cases at that time.
I have over 3,000 cases now.
They estimated 100 yards from the left wing was this 100-foot disc.
And the strength of the signal was as strong as the surface contact on the water of an aircraft carrier. This contact was huge.
The size of these objects around 100 meters or greater.
So it would go from 1 o'clock, 7 or 8 miles to 6, 7 o'clock, 7 or 8 miles inside of 4 or 5 seconds. You have to be moving pretty quickly.
They could rise, just go straight up. They could do that. Just seemed like instantaneous.
Once they started moving, they went straight up, for a while, and then they went zap.
Then it just sort of disappeared. It dematerialized
and left the atmosphere, just was gone. It just took off into space.
He said, "You are never to speak of this again. As far as you're concerned, this never happened."
And you never saw this, and I don't exist, and this situation never happened.
I didn't want to look at it any longer than that because I felt that my life was in jeopardy.
I am prepared to state that I have been at locations where craft of unknown origin that did not originate on the face of this planet was there. I am prepared to state that while I was there, we saw living, dead bodies of entities that were not born on this planet. I am prepared to state that we had what they referred to as interfacing with those entities. We have contact with aliens not originating from some foreign country, but from some other solar system. And I have been a party to that.
What some of these witnesses also revealed were observations of UFOs hovering over storage sites of nuclear weapons and nuclear rocket launch sites.
The big increase in all the sightings around the world happened at the time when we began to detonate nuclear weapons. This is not an accident. And I've been told by senior intelligence officials that essentially a big red flag went up over our planet saying we were in trouble. But not only are we in trouble, but we could be a threat to others, because you combine going into space, the early stages of space travel, and the use of hydrogen bombs and nuclear weapons, and a civilization on Earth that was still very violent, as you look around the Earth even today, of course. So this is something that any enlightened or even self-interested civilization observing the Earth, which I think we've been under observation for thousands of years, would be greatly concerned.
Over the last 35 years, I have talked to now over 100 people, about 115 nuclear missile launch officers, targeting officers, missile maintenance personnel, and missile guards. And these individuals, for the most part, do not know each other. Some were in the Air Force in the 1960s, some were in the Air Force in the 1990s. And they were at different bases, but they all have very, very similar stories. And what they describe is UFOs coming in very quickly at high rates of speed and instantly stopping and hovering, either over the underground nuclear missile launchers or what are called launch control facilities that launch the missiles. So after the missiles malfunction, the UFO leaves. Now, this has occurred at least 3 Air Force bases that I'm aware of in the United States.
The event, the incident, I guess I call it, is happened on the morning of March 16th, 1967. As I recall, it was early in the morning, and I received a call from my topside security guard, and he said that he and some of the guards had been observing some strange lights flying around the site. It wasn't more than, well, within a few minutes, I'd say, maybe a half hour later. He calls back, and this time he's very frightened. I can tell by the tone of his voice, he's very shook up, and said, "Sir, there's a glowing red object hovering right outside the front gate." He said, "I'm looking at it right now. It's a glowing red object. I've got all the men out here with their weapons drawn." And of course, he was all shook up while he was telling me this. He was very excited. I immediately went over to my commander, who was taking a nap. We have a little cot down there in a rest period. And I was telling him about the telephone call we just received. And as I was relating this to him, our missiles started shutting down one by one. There were approximately anywhere from 6 to 8 that went down, but they went down in rapid succession, which again is extremely rare. And in the meantime, I called upstairs to find out what the status was of this object. And the guard said, "Well, the object has left. It just left at high speed."
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 en la pantalla.
Numerous well-documented UFO sightings by numerous credible people. Flying saucers tracked on radar, chased by fighter pilots. Nuclear missile sites malfunctioning after UFO visitations. And even alien beings witnessed by police officers and high-ranked military personnel. Where does all this leave us?
4 major conclusions after now 52 years, 51 years of study and investigation. First, the evidence is overwhelming that planet Earth is being visited by intelligently controlled extraterrestrial spacecraft. In other words, some UFOs, some, underline it 20 times, some UFOs are alien spacecraft. Most are not. I don't care about the ones that aren't. I'm a nuclear physicist. I don't care about the isotopes that aren't fissionable. You want to build a reactor, use the one that is. Who cares about the rest? That's the first conclusion. Second, the subject of flying saucers represents a kind of cosmic Watergate. That is to say, some few people within major governments have known since at least 1947, when at least 2 crashed flying saucers were recovered with alien bodies in New Mexico, that indeed some UFOs are alien spacecraft. Notice I'm not saying everybody in government knows. That's not how you keep secrets. I worked under security for 14 years. Need to know is the important factor. The third conclusion is that none of the arguments made against the first two by a small group of noisy negativists, when I'm being polite, stand up under careful scrutiny. They sound great until you look at the data, and then all those anti-arguments collapse. And the fourth conclusion, because I'm such a shy, retiring kind of guy, is that this is the biggest story of the millennium. Visits to planet Earth by alien spacecraft. Successful cover-up of the best data, bodies and wreckage, for 62 years.
In the 90s, people started recording their observations with the new handy camcorders. Today, thousands of UFO clips are posted on YouTube. But unfortunately, with the sophisticated animation tools now available on home PCs, it's almost impossible to tell the real from the fake. So this has made both video and digital stills documentation less reliable as evidence or proof of sightings. But in spite of this growing interest in the subject, the main news media have left the UFO phenomenon almost untouched.
In terms of mainstream news coverage, this topic is not taken seriously. It's basically a non-topic. So how is that so? Here's how. It requires an understanding of the relationship between most of the mainstream news media and global intelligence communities. So what that says, that doesn't mean that the CIA controlled everything, but that you have to understand the media acts in certain choke points. So for example, a UFO sighting might get local news coverage, but that doesn't mean that it gets covered on the wire services. That's a very different situation altogether. And skeptics will argue, well, this phenomenon is so big it would have been covered, but really what that betrays is a lack of understanding of how news media has been related to intelligence communities around the world for decades.
And I call upon our government to open up like other governments have, and you will hear about that this morning. Like the
When CNN covered a press conference in Washington, D.C. in 2009, where Dr. Edgar Mitchell encouraged U.S. government to release its UFO files, the hope was that the issue finally was given serious news coverage.
Former Apollo astronaut Edgar Mitchell, the sixth man to walk on the moon, told the National Press Club he's convinced.
But there isn't convincing proof that's going to convince the entire world at this point.
That is correct. That is what we're trying to open up.
We're about to go out and do our little hoax.
But CNN chose to let two boys with air balloons have just as much time in the report, demonstrating how they managed to fool UFO believers.
Again, we're not trying to prove or disprove anything, but it's okay to be skeptical.
Okay then. Jim, thank you very much indeed for that. Jim Acosta there.
You bet.
Well, the role of the media in the flying saucer phenomenon is a very, very important one. I think it's very clear that in the United States, at the very least, that there were efforts during the very earliest days to try to get the media to basically dampen down expectations and dampen down public enthusiasm concerning extraterrestrial life and the flying saucer phenomenon. And this is actually documented. And ever since that, we have seen many, many examples of how the media doesn't really explore or doesn't really investigate flying saucer reports, and that various media organs have been brought out by the CIA. For example, the National Enquirer was actually brought out by a CIA asset who used it as a very clever way to debunk flying saucer reports by basically sensationalizing it, making it part of a kind of tabloid media, whereby serious media investigators would not do any research into a flying saucer report that had been in any way covered by the National Enquirer or these tabloids. So that was a very clever piece of psychological warfare, in my opinion, to try and get the mass media disinterested in the flying saucer phenomenon.
So it's a very, very complex issue, and the secrecy isn't that hard to maintain if you have this sort of infiltration into major institutions, media, and also the ability simply to float nonsensical stories out there. Because people hear the word UFO and extraterrestrial, they think somebody from a trailer park in West Virginia who's floated on board a spacecraft, had sex with someone from Mars, and claims they have a baby in an incubator. Or, but just all kinds of nonsense. The truth of it is actually more interesting. The truth of the technologies and the fact that the extraterrestrial technologies are so advanced that they interface directly with coherent thought. Like we have coherent light in a laser, they have technologies that interface with thought, that interface with conscious mind, that the development of artificial intelligence that's integrated into these spacecraft is so advanced that they pick up on a directed. It's fascinating. And this is what we've been experimenting with. And the whole paradigm becomes a new paradigm of understanding the structure of the cosmos. But most of the information that's out in the public on this issue has been a carnival of silliness. And that keeps most serious people sort of in the closet on it.
Is this the reason why so few scientists engage in the UFO subject? The fear of being associated with the silly side of the issue. Is this also why it's never commented on by astronomers or by space organizations such as NASA?
This is not just a simple civilian organization. There's a great military connection there. There's a lot of classified security clearances involved in being able to work at NASA. You can't just stroll in there. So these are people who fit a certain personality profile. That is, they know how to follow orders, they know how to keep their mouth shut, and keep their head down, and their career will do just fine. That's how most people are who live in a bureaucratic world. This is how secrets are kept. There are open secrets that are kept for years and years and years because people agree just not to talk about it. And I think that within NASA this is very likely the case regarding the UFO issue.
But like Dr. Edgar Mitchell, people retired from NASA have commented on the issue. Astronaut Gordon Cooper has told the world straight out about encountering a UFO at close range during his flight in the Mercury capsule in 1963. And before he died, he also stated, "For many years I have lived with a secret, in a secrecy imposed on all specialists in astronautics. I can now reveal that every day in the USA, our radar instruments capture objects of form and
is they're making themselves visible now much more than before. Madrid just had hundreds of ships flying over, the capital of Spain. China is seeing all kinds of UFO activity. Mexico, it's unprecedented with thousands of ships in the air. I've seen footage of ships over Mexico where the whole frame is full of UFOs and they're all moving synchronistically. It's just amazing. But you couldn't even count them. I was counting, 200 plus in just one frame, and that was just a small part of the flotilla. So this is happening on a regular basis, Peru, Brazil, everywhere, and it's headline news. It's total headline news there, but where is our press? Why? You've got a whole flotilla flying over capitals of countries that are being witnessed by thousands of people, but why is that not in our news? We have to ask that question. And the answer is quite simple. The news is totally controlled.
In January 2007, 2 months after the event, the media reported that a UFO was sighted over Chicago's O'Hare Airport by pilot and ground crew. It hovered, then shot up through the clouds. Officialdom, as always, dismissed it as a weather phenomenon. But how do you dismiss former Arizona State Governor Fife Symington, also a pilot, who tells the Arizona Star that the lights seen over Phoenix a decade ago were from another world?
I think if I had control of the news, I would put more spiritual content, more positive content, more information concerning fuelless energy breakthroughs, which is also taboo. You never hear about that. I would bring forward major cures for diseases which have been held back. I would bring forward people that are on the forefront of these technologies and this new wisdom coming out. And I would turn the news into a full-service organization that's dedicated to the awakening and healing of humanity and the earth, not holding humanity down in darkness and fear and terror, which is basically what it said. It's beyond anything that we have. A lot of these experiences that I've had have helped me to understand the true nature of man, which is, in truth, a multidimensional being existing on a vibrational continuum. And almost all the physicists believe right now that we can measure and experience less than 1% of the universe that we live in. There's another 99% out there. They also know, according to the latest superstring theory and things of that nature, that there's at least 11 dimensions out there beyond this dimension. And you look at all the diversity of life in just this dimension alone and add 10 more dimensions to that, you can imagine what's out there. And if you look at this physical universe we're in, with 200 billion suns with planets revolving around them, and now they know there's at least 500 billion galaxies out there with the same effect. Whole new galaxies and universes are being created daily. The creation is ongoing. So I'm just saying, according to the science that we know today, the science is there to explain all of these events, and my experiences fit within that science. But if people just believe they're a body and a personality, that's their reality. It's a very limited reality, but that's their reality, and you can't argue with somebody if they don't have any reference points or the understanding of these other